Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX, and we just wrapped up our 2022 250 Shootout. We're here to do our round table. We got 4 of our 6 test riders, myself and Sean Klinger, who are on staff at Vital MX, Chris Siebenhaar and Willie Simons, who help us out with a lot of these tests. They spent all the days of this shootout with us. We all have our individual notes, our opinions. We have our overall score, and we're going to basically break down each bike based on how they finished and see where we agree, where we disagree, because that's part of it. Ultimately, a shootout is a subjective opinion. There's not really a right or a wrong answer at the end of the day. It's just kind of what we think based on our experience and our thoughts, and that's what we're here to share with you. So there's going to be one of these videos on each motorcycle. Make sure you check out all of them if you're really interested in finding out which bike is best for you this year. Well, similar to the 450 shootout, the newcomer, I mean, we all know, yes, it's just a different color version per se of the Austrian bikes. It's one of the trio, the GasGas. It has its couple small differences, and clearly those mean a lot because the bike ended up second overall. Let's go to you, Sean. Where did it rank personally, and why do you think it ended up second overall?
So I ranked it second behind the Yamaha, and for vastly different reasons, because the Yamaha and the GasGas to me are very different bikes, but why it works so well for me is comfort and like ease of rideability right from stock. I mean, the only thing I had to do to the suspension was I went 3 clicks stiffer on compression on the fork and half a turn on high speed on the shock. And for both tracks, Kauai and at Paris, that was it, and it was good. The power character, especially comparing it to the other Austrian bikes, it's like it is mellower on the bottom, and then, you know, it has more of a mid-range, and then you scream it out, but it's like, it's not slow. You know, it's still, the bottom end is not lacking. It's just not like a punch, but then you just get used to riding a bike that way. And last year, my long-haul bike was the GasGas 250, so I think I'm just really used to that power as well.
The GasGas for me was a huge shocker because I had never ridden the motocross one, and I actually ranked it first this year, which was a big shock. Both days just came back with a huge smile on my face. I had an absolute blast on that bike. Minimal changes at Kauai, just a couple clicks out, softer on the forks, and a little bit softer on the high speed on the shock. And that bike is just, the whole platform to me feels different than the other Austrian bikes, which it's crazy to think because obviously a lot of those parts are interchangeable and people are going to say that they're just the same, different colors, but they really do feel different. And I just had a blast on the GasGas. It was the easiest to ride out of the 3 Austrian bikes. And power-wise, I'd heard stuff in the past that maybe it was a little bit slower, and I didn't feel that at all. And Kauai is pretty wide open and smooth, and then Paris has some tight turns and jumps right out of corners, and I just had a blast on that thing. And even today at Paris, I didn't touch one thing, not even one clicker. Left the stock 10.5 bar pressure and just 90, I think I was about 96 millimeters of sag, and I just had a blast on it. I honestly didn't want to get off that bike, and I had to force myself to get on that bike to continue the rotation, but it was a big shock because I had ridden the off-road one, and they're a little bit different. It's way softer, but I think why that bike is comfortable to me is the valving is softer, and it does feel more nimble. I felt like I could get more over the front and just kind of put the thing wherever I needed, and that's why it was ranked number 1 for me. And obviously the nail on the head was that I didn't make one change to it today, and the track was pretty deep, and it did have some holes, and I was just super jazzed on that thing.
Similar to you, I mean, I made very, very little changes. I pretty much went fork, compression, clicker a little bit each day. I didn't touch anything, I think, on the shock. Air pressure I left alone, and somebody said the only reason it didn't win for me in saying that I gave it third is it is a longer linear power characteristic, which, don't get me wrong, it has its place. It's not my personal preference. At Kahia, it was amazing. Kahia is a very fast track. It's a very flowing track, so you're never forcing the bike to come off the bottom, so that real linear character, it just flows with the track, and I just felt like I could literally just wring the bike's neck out in so many sections. It was never getting away from me, but it was just enough to keep me satisfied. I actually really like the power character in it more than the KTM and the Husky. The Husky, more closed off airbox, is even more lethargic. The KTM is a little bit quicker revving than the GasGas, but I say this on a lot of stuff. I really appreciate a bike that feels well mapped, that feels connected to the wrist. The KTM's a little stuttery feeling to me in the corners. The GasGas, I just felt like everything I did with my throttle hand was immediately responded to by the bike. Not that it's a lot of power, but it was just right wherever I wanted, and I felt like every little input I gave the throttle, it reacted to.
I was really surprised with, I guess, the motor, like, being the entry level of the group, right? You know, it's the cheapest price. You kind of feel like it's also going to be just an entry level feel throughout, but the motor is surprisingly strong. I felt like it almost hit a little bit harder than the KTM, unless, at least with the stock map. You know, the KTM, you can obviously adjust maps. The GasGas, you can't. But the chassis is it's so, like I said, it's forgiving. It doesn't really kick back at you. It just kind of like wiggles its way through the track.
And it's like sometimes we talk about track toughness, and it's like that bike goes about it that way, being super comfortable. You can almost take it to any track, whereas like the Yamaha has track toughness because it's so adjustable. You know, it's kind of going at it two different ways, but ending at the same place.
The thing I thought was most weird, because we all got off the bike separate. Like I was talking to you, like you get on the bike, you ride it, and you're like, man, it's really good. And you go in and, you know, they ask what changes you want to make. And you're kind of like, I don't really want to make a change, but I also feel like I have to try something. So you try it, and then you're like, nah, go back to stock, or let's go the other way. And you try it, and you're like, nah, just go back to stock. And it's like you're bouncing back and forth, and you end up just settling back to stock for the most part, or within a click or two of it.
Yeah, and ultimately the bike did well. It is still a decent points gap from the Yamaha. Yamaha was 8 points overall. The GasGas was a fourth, a second, a fourth, a first, a fourth, and a third. I think that's a little bit where that power character shines in, because I think a lot of guys agree. Kahia was good. Paris, it is, for some of the tight jumps out of the corners, it's maybe not as like responsive, snappy as some of the bikes. I can see that being a drawback. We also had one or two test riders that mentioned that, yes, the softer character absorbs stuff, but it feels a little wallowy in certain places. But like I said, overall, we joke about it's like, well, it's supposed to be cheap. It has the least amount of features, but it just works pretty darn decent. And he can't shy away. That's why I think it ultimately ends up second. It was really tight between it and the KTM for third, but just the fact that I think everybody was able to just find their comfort so easy on it, ultimately why it beat out its longer running orange brethren.
I mean, the only other thing, with the not having the map switch, is it's funny with the option on the KTM and the Husky, I go to map 2 and I'm like, oh yeah, map 2 is better. Without the option on the GasGas, I'm not looking for the map switch. I'm like, oh, this is fine.
Well, and that's part where I said I like it better than the KTM is a lot of these bikes, you know, you bring up all map 2 is more aggressive, this or that, and it is fun to me in the moment when you press the button, like, oh, the bike's responding quicker, I'm going to hit stuff better. But like I said, when I really start to feel out the differences, if I really weigh it, a lot of the smoother maps work better in corners, work better in ruts, if it's slick and stuff. That was a big one. I rode the GasGas early and late in the day at both tracks, and you know, just that smooth standard map is very connected. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. I would label that's just kind of the GasGas in general. It's not the most exciting per se, like how it works, but it's just so rewarding to ride. And I feel like that power character is like that. It's super rewarding section to section. The other thing that's really weird about in power characteristic, we talk about how linear they are. Yes, the motor character is like that, but they also gear their bike a lot different, I feel like, than anybody else out of the box. You know, everything else you're shifting a lot more. It's not just these things like rev to the moon. They aren't that much higher RPM than everybody else. It's also the stock gearing they choose to go with. They try to set up their bikes to be easy to ride. The gearing arm is way more spread out. There's so many jumps at Kahia and Paris where I'm just staying in second gear. The other bikes I'm trying to find third real quick before the jump face. Nah, KTM, Husky, GasGas, any of them, I just leave it in second, just ring it out. And it's not that it's revving out. You're still pulling through the range.
You're still making power. It's like there's no cliff at the top. You know, it's not going to like, you know, magically get faster and faster and faster, but it's like it still makes power all the way to the top. And if you mess up and go, oh, I missed a shift and I should be in third, but I'm in second, you don't die. Like it still makes power.
Last one for everybody. Air forks. I've always been a pretty big fan of them. I've ran like PSF1 systems forever and a bunch of stuff. I will say this thing is really good out of the box. The adjustability, the air pressure is nice. Who would say this bike makes him a little bit of a believer in air forks? They aren't too bad.
Yeah. No,
I think the new fork, I think when KTM changed it last year was, you know, I think when we did the intro last year on the KTM, I say like this is the best air fork I think that was ever made. You know, and so many of the other brands, KYB and Showa, you know, they've kind of bounced back and forth on the air forks. They didn't really stick to a direction. They were just, you know, throwing spaghetti on the walls and seeing what sticks. Where KTM, they had a fork, they had a design, and they've kind of kept marching forward along that same path, and they've ended at an actual really good fork.
Thank you for joining us for another roundtable. Like I said at the beginning, there is multiple of these, one for every single motorcycle, whichever one you've just watched. If you want to learn about the next most interesting bike, make sure you hit our video playlist, look around. There's plenty of them in there. If you want to check out our full detailed article, dyno charts, you know, weights, all the stuff you want to read through, that's on our site at vitalmx.com. The link is in the bio below. And once again, if you like what we do here, please subscribe, hit like. It really helps us, and we get to keep cranking out great content like this.